Good afternoon, Mr. Manning.
Good afternoon.
Hey, I don't sound sick. Oh.
Well, it's 2 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting of the Transportation Ad Hoc Committee to order. Miss Onley, are you with us?
Here you go, Mama.
Well, I'll call the roll. Mr. Malinowski,
I'm here, but if Miss Only isn't with us, who's going to keep track of it?
you. It's being recorded by somebody.
Okay, that's good. I'm here.
Mr. Livingston,
Here.
Miss Myers,
Here.
McBride. Okay, Miss McBride did send an email to all the chairs of committees today indicating that she was probably not going to be present at any of the committee meetings, but if something changed, she'd join in. Also need to share with my colleagues that COVID and my family situation, I came with my wife over to her parents outside of Chattanooga, Tennessee. Her mother's having chemo treatments all week, and her father had a couple medical appointments, so I'm here to help out with that. Unfortunately, the bag where I always keep my cord that travels with my laptop is in a bedroom that was set up as an office for COVID at the house. And the other one stays in another room. So anyway, I'm here without a cord, so I don't have power. I do have a little
These are the books going out?
on my laptop that I'm kind of saving for executive session this evening. So please bear with me that I'm on the iPhone and don't have my computer to pull up any of the documents as we go. But I do have a hard copy. So y'all, please bear with me. Help me out everywhere and every time you see that I need some help, please. That all being said, the call to order has been done, the roll call. Hopefully Miss Only will join us if she hasn't already. But I do notice the red record button is on, so we will have a recording per Mr. Councilman Malinowski's question earlier. Item number 2 is approval of the minutes from the committee meeting held September 22nd, 2020, which are pages 2 through 7 on your agenda, and I'll entertain a motion for that. All right, hearing none, we'll go without those minutes approved, and maybe we can take those up at our next meeting or later on today.
And Mr. Chair, I didn't make a motion since I wasn't here at that meeting.
All right, number 3 is adoption of the agenda.
So moved.
Been properly moved by Chairman
Livingston.
Council Livingston.
Okay.
Has been seconded by Councilman Malinowski. Any discussion? Carry the vote. All those in favor of the adoption of the agenda, by aye.
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 Any
Livingston,
opposed?
aye.
Hearing none, it stands approved. Item number 4, item for information, the Bull Elmwood intersection project, individual parcel owner right-of-way acquisition. I believe we had something sent to us that might need to go executive session. Is that correct?
Mr. Manning, that's correct. There wasn't anything specifically said. We put a placeholder in the agenda, and I can verbally provide that information to everybody.
All right. Well, anything that does not need to go in executive session, please share with us. And if we need to go to executive session, if you'll share clearly. Oh yeah, I'm remembering there was some back and forth with the attorney's office about that.
Mr. Manning, I can provide information as long as we don't talk about the actual negotiation and just provide an update. However, I think the intent was to provide the amount we're looking to offer to the committee for information, and that would definitely require an executive session.
Okay, we'll do what is public, and then the part that needs to go into executive session, if you'll clearly identify what that is, that we're going into executive session, and I'll look to carry the vote at that time.
Thank you, Mr. Manning. So as the committee and others may recall, Elmwood intersection was a major intersection project that had been, the design had been completed. We were at the final stages of acquiring a final piece of property from the Bull Elmwood Church of God around fall of last year when the program came in-house. Once the program was put on hold, that negotiation ended until May, when we got the go-ahead to keep moving forward. Subsequently, a number of us from the staff met with Bull Elmwood, the Church of God, back in July. Had a discussion that we were restarting the project and discussed the acquisition of the remaining parcel from their property. As such, they presented some information that allowed us to believe that we would be able to secure that parcel. And so we sent I sent a request to the administration for approval to increase the offer. They verbally agreed to it, and that offer is going to be verbalized to this committee just for information and situational awareness, with the intent of then moving forward with the Church of God so we can secure the remaining parcel and move ahead with the project. And if you'd like to talk about the number itself, I would suggest going to executive session.
Okay, I was kind of waiting for whoever else was giving a report here.
Chair Manning, maybe request the clerk to cancel all mics if possible as a host.
Mr. Manning, you're muted.
Thank you. Ms. Black is on the call now from the clerk's office, so she can call the roll for us. So is there a motion to go into executive session at this point?
So move, Mr. Chair.
Been properly moved by Mr. Livingston. I will second it. Any discussion? All those in favor for executive, or Ms. Black, will you please call the roll?
Malinowski,
Oh, Mr. Chair, I had a question before I say yes. Hey,
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
what was the purpose for the executive session?
I thought Mr. Niemeyer said that. Mr. Niemeyer, will you remind us why we're needing to go into executive session, please?
Certainly, Mr. Manning. Mr. Malinowski, in order to discuss or talk about the amount of money that was going to be offered to the parcel owner, that's an ongoing negotiation. It's not for public.
That's right. Thank you.
All righty. Any other questions before we carry the vote? Ms. Black, please.
Mr. Malinowski,
Yes.
McBride, Livingston,
Yes.
Manning,
Yes.
Myers. Motion
All right.
passes.
The vote carries. So IT, and who needs to be in the executive session with us? Mr. Niemeyer?
At a minimum, the committee members, myself, I would suspect Mr. Brown would like to be in there and anyone he would like to include too.
All right, do we need the county attorney?
Kurt?
This is Brad Farah. I would suggest if you're going to discuss negotiation as part of resolving some matter, you have the lawyer present.
All right,
But that is up to you. It's just that's typically you would do that with that's what issue.
okay, yep, thank you, sir. So whoever's controlling that, will you please send to the executive session breakout room, the council members? And I'm sorry, I also want to recognize, I believe, Miss Councilwoman Teratio is joining us. Are there any other council members that I'm not seeing on my screen? Okay, so whoever's sending us, if you'll send the members of the committee, Councilwoman Teratio, Attorney Fair, Administrator Mr. Brown, and Transportation Director Michael Niemeyer.
Mr. Manning, my mic was
Yeah.
muted. Please forgive me for not voting in the other questions. Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Hello?
All
Mr.
right.
Livingston?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, it says I'm in the main session, though. Am I in the main
Yes,
session or the?
no, we're all in the main session.
Okay, thank
All
you.
right. Whoever did the breakout room, whenever we got in there, you had all the right people, but as soon as we got in there, it said that the breakout session would end in 60 seconds, and then it counted down, and now we're all back here. So whoever sent us, if you could send us back and give us a little bit more time. There we go. All right, I'm scrolling through my phone. I see Mr. Brown's back, Mr. Niemeyer's back. Mr. Malinowski's back. Mr. Brown's back. Miss Livingston.
He's back.
I see you, yes, sir. Councilwoman Teresia's back. Our attorney's back. Councilwoman Myers back. Okay, it looks like everybody's back. I'll entertain a motion to come out of executive session, please.
So move, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Livingston.
Second.
Second by Mr. Malinowski. All those in favor, Ms. Black, call the roll.
Malinowski,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Manning,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you very much. So we were in executive session. This item's for information only. There were no decisions made, formal, informal, or otherwise. That brings us to item number 5, items for action. We have A, B, C, D, and E. First item for action is the Transportation Department budget transfers. You'll find these on pages 9 through 37 of your agenda and packet. So staff recommends approval of the requested budget transfers shown in attachment 1. And attachment 1 is on page 11 of 131. So let me entertain a motion and then we'll address whatever needs addressed.
Mr. Chair, move it.
All right, so
That
it's moved
recommendation.
by Mr. Livingston. I have a second. I'll go ahead and second it. So I have a motion for the staff recommendation approval of the requested budget transfers shown in attachment 1 on page 11 of 131. Do we have discussion about this in a broad sense or any of the individual items?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Councilman Malinowski.
I guess I'd first like to know the purpose of some of these pages that were in here, unless it was they didn't feel like cutting them out of some previous minutes, but pages 12 to 26 and 29 to 37. I'm wondering the purpose that those, why they're in there. Am I missing something? Is there some importance in those pages other than their minutes of previous meeting?
Well, we have council members who feel like they never get done. I believe it's because all the items in attachment 1, there is some bit of reference to where they got there, why they're there in these minutes. I know, like if you look on page 27 or 131, it's highlighted.
Yeah.
Goes over on to page 28. Mr.
Those are-
Niemeyer, do you have more clarification than mine?
Thank you, Mr. Manning. To your point, Mr. Malinowski, I could have removed everything in between the first page and page 29. Because we're just trying to point out where the budget approval authority came from council action.
Okay, well, I just like to see only that in the future. I got enough stuff that we read here without having
Yes,
to
sir.
figure something
Understood.
else out. I've got some other questions, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, sir. You have the floor.
Thank you, sir. You've asked for a huge lump sum of transfers in accordance with the current transfer policy. Are all of these dollars needed right now?
Yes, they are, sir.
You guess they are. When will you know if they are?
All the money, particularly the 10.775 million is essential to these, the projects that are gaining, the Blythewood Road widening, Decker Woodfield, Spears Creek Church Road. The smaller portion, which is the Greenway realignment, the $1.467 million is necessary as we move forward with at least 3 of those greenways, and that money needs to be reallocated. And
What are the
it's
start
compliant
dates?
with the revised ordinance.
Do we have start dates for these projects that are on page 11?
Yes, sir. Broad Road River Road widening, we're finalizing some right-of-way acquisitions, and that can be advertised in the spring, if not or late winter of next year. Decker Woodfield NIP, that money was essentially borrowed to compensate for the budget that we had to remove. And there's projects ongoing with that right now. Faraway sidewalk.
Okay, Mr. Niermeyer, you can go back to the first one. You said the Broad River Road widening. It's in the spring of next year at the earliest. Is that correct?
That's incorrect, sir. There's the projects on the left, Broad River Road widening, shop widening, extension, shop extension. Those are the money that we are taking from, because those are not in the plan in the next year, if not 2 years, where we're going to require that money.
Oh, okay. And then down below it, we're also taking from all of those?
Yes, sir. The money below is the money coming from the projects below is being realigned to comply with Ordinance 5619 HR, which council approved with the realignment of the greenways. So whereas we should have done the realignment in the current budget, some reason it got lost in April, and we're just doing that now that we have the ability to do budget transfers in October.
Okay, then I guess what I'd be interested in knowing is the projects that these funds are going to, Blythewood widening, Decker, Spears Creek, what are their start dates?
So Blythewood Road widening, we intend to, we're finalizing a couple right-of-ways that we need to acquire, 4 parcels that intend to be advertised January, February, March of 2021. Decker Woodfield, there are projects underway for that one. And the Spears Creek Church Road, you'll see before you that we have the design service order. So that money is going back into that project that will assist us in funding that service order and the future right-of-way acquisitions if needed.
Okay, now what happens when these transfers, if these transfers are approved, and then the project doesn't start as planned or doesn't take place? Does the money go back to where it came from?
Not necessarily, sir. The money that we're moving was unencumbered. It was programmed and approved in previous year's budgets, and it just rolled with last year's budget approval. So looking at a more comprehensive schedule, we're not going to need that the next year. So we're moving it to where it could be needed. So when those projects come back around, so for example, Broad River Road widening, as we move into a new service order to get that design and any right-of-way done, that will be budgeted for in a future year. So let's say 2022 budget, we may go and say, okay, we're going to need 3 in Broad River Road widening for professional service for design. We would actually budget for that. Right now, there's unused money that we rolled, not necessarily knowing what the future holds. And that was the intent of a very conservative budget from last year.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Niermeyer.
Thank you, Councilman Malinowski. Do we have other questions? All right, hearing none, then we'll move on the motion, which is to accept the staff's recommendation for The budget transfers shown in attachment 1. Again, reminder, it's on page 11. Ms. Black, will you please call the roll?
Malinowski,
No.
Livingston,
Yes.
Manning,
Yes.
Myers.
No.
All
All
right.
right, it's a tie, so it fails.
That motion does not pass. Are there any additional motions before we move on to the next item?
Move to cancel without a recommendation.
All right. We have a motion to send that to council without a recommendation. Is there a second? I'll second it. Any
Mr. Chair.
discussion? Yes, Mr. Malinowski.
Thank you, Chairman Manning. I'd like to ask legal, once a motion has been carried, that particular item ends. I can see if you get secondary and subsecondary motions, but there weren't any. There was one motion, it failed. Is it proper to all of a sudden ask for another motion?
Hey, this is Brad. Yes, you could have another motion at that point because the item is still there. You can either report it to the full committee as having received the vote that it did initially, and just kind of report that action, or you can report, because what you got now before you is to report it without any recommendation. If that were to fail, you can still report both of those votes to the full council. So it's another motion, as long as it's not the same motion, is appropriate.
Even though the item was ended?
I don't know that, did he move on to the next item on the agenda, or was there another motion taken?
No, he asked if there were others. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we do have a motion to send this to full council without a recommendation. It was properly second. Any discussion on that? All right. I'd like to offer a substitute motion, and that is that we hold this item in committee.
That's
I'll
it.
second it.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been properly moved and second. Any discussion on that?
Question.
Yes.
I have a question, sir.
Yes, go ahead.
What would be the purpose of holding it in committee?
Just see if there's any more information or additional information the committee may need to consider to do transfer, or whether there's maybe just one or two items that may really be the concern. It's just, I hate for it to die at this point, to be honest with you, without further thought and consideration. That's the reason for my motion.
But even if the motion fails in committee, it is considered by the full council, and council has the prerogative to disagree with the committee. So I'm not really clear on why we would hold it.
So that's a contention that it's going to full council anyway.
Well, the reports of the committees go to council, and council can choose to do something. I'm not suggesting that they will, but it seems to me that this gets reported out to the full council anyway. So I just don't understand why we're holding it in committee, but I'm happy to do that.
Well, I'll take my substitute motion off the table then and go back to the original motion, which was Mr. Livingston's, to send it to the committee, to full council without a report. Without a recommendation. So the motion on the floor now, since I removed mine, is Councilman Livingston's motion, which was to send it to full council without a committee recommendation. Is there any further discussion on that? Ms. Black, will you carry the vote, please?
Malinowski,
No.
Livingston,
Yes.
Manning,
Yes.
Myers,
I'm in favor of it going to council with the recommendation from the first vote, so no.
it's a tie, it fails.
Okay. All right, that takes us to, unless there are any other motions before that takes me anywhere.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
so I was just, it looks like there's two different kind of buckets here. Do you think that is the issue? Could this be split so that perhaps the transfers could occur for the greenways or vice versa?
Well, my understanding, Councilwoman Terratio, is that this will be reported out to full council, letting them know the votes that were taken in the committee. And I think it could happen at that level.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Item 5C, Transportation Organization. You have that on page 101 through 103. You will recall that at the last.
Mr.
Did we
Chair,
do B?
Yes, 5B.
Pardon me? Oh, I'm sorry.
B.
Thank you. 5B, Spears Creek Church Road widening design service order. That's on pages 38 through 100. And the staff recommendation on that is approve the Holt service order number 19 for the Spears Creek Church Road widening project. But I have a motion for the staff recommendation that'll take us to discussion of those pages.
Move, Mr. Chair. Move for approval. Staff recommendation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. It's been properly moved. I have a second.
I'll second it.
All right. It's been seconded by Ms. Myers. For discussion on the motion for approval of the Holt service order number 19 for Spears Creek Church Road widening project, pages 38 through 100.
Mr. Manning, may I be recognized, sir?
Yes, you may.
Just want to point out, I'm not fully sure we have Mr. Niedermeyer certainly on the call, but one of the items that you were just addressing related to a budget transfer in a previous item was addressing the Spears Creek. And so I just want to make sure that before you take any final action that we are aware of, how the funding may or may not work, considering what we just talked about in the previous item. So just want to bring that up.
Thank you. Discussion by my colleagues. All right, hearing none, we have the motion on the floor. Ms. Black.
Malinowski,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Manning,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you. That takes
Mr.
us.
Manning, before we move further, may I
Certainly.
offer a second motion on that issue?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Farrar, is a motion in order on this issue?
The chair's ruling it is.
Okay. I would move to authorize the necessary budget transfers to allow the project to go forward.
All right, you've heard the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and second to authorize the budget transfers on this particular project to move this forward as well. Discussion. Ms. Black, call the roll, please.
Malinowski. Malinowski,
No.
Livingston,
Yes.
Manning,
Yes.
Myers.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. All right. Item 5C. I believe I got it right this time. Transportation Organization. These are pages 101, 103 in your packet. You'll recall two things. One is that per council ordinance, all organizational chart issues come before county council. So this is coming via this committee. When we met last time, there was some unclarity. I don't know if that's a word. It wasn't quite clear about the way the arrows were drawn, and we had two different organizational charts, which confused some things. So we have one in this packet. It's clear. I believe Councilman Malinowski, an issue you had on the last time was if the assistant director was under the director, then why other people wouldn't be under the assistant director. This also is necessary because it includes the finance manager. The committee recommended the full council approved the hiring of the finance manager, but this is the organizational chart to include that position, which is already approved. So given that bit of a history, do we have questions about the organizational chart, or are we ready to approve it?
I have a few questions.
Go right ahead.
You know, we haven't spent a whole lot of penny funds on procurement. Now, how is that covered? If it's not on this chart, how do we make sure, you know, we're using appropriate penny tax dollars to take care of procurement matters? Because that's a big issue when it comes to the penny program.
I'll let one of the county staff answer that question.
And Mr. Manning, if I may.
Sure.
So since we've brought the program into the county, you know, we now leverage more of the existing county resources for such things as procurement. So whereas, you know, the transportation staff develops the scopes of work, does the checklists, does all the development of the procurement documents for a said project, then it's on procurement that would go ahead and make sure everything is in order, does the advertisement, you know, runs any of the pre-bid meetings, pre-construction meetings as they may be. So that resource of the county is leveraged for that.
So we're using general funds for penny procurement matters.
For procurement matters, yes, sir.
No, what wasn't the intent, but okay. Next question is, what about as it relates to public involvement and information surrounding the penny? Is that also being handled totally now by general fund dollars?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. Mr. Nehemiah, I'll jump in here. Just briefly, Mr. Chair, on both of those items, that was information that was shared with us. You may recall those were items that were specifically pointed out by the Department of Revenue, that because the county already had a public information office and a procurement office, that any services that they deemed to be doubling those efforts would be improper. So the short answer is yes, both of those departments are general fund paid departments, and those departments are used to push out public information and to do procurement services for these items.
What about, I'm talking public involvement, you know, for example, when you're trying to purchase property for right of way and stuff like that, and you're trying to engage the public, so you can't use, so all that's being done with general fund money.
Mr. Livingston, if I may, So I'll give you an example. So when we were providing information in the March of before COVID on the Greenway realignment action that council approved through the ordinance, we used penny funding to set up that public information meeting, buy the signs, any of the handouts, our time. So we did, in fact, use penny money for that. Now, there was some involvement from other county resources, but the actual cost of doing the event were borne by the penny program.
Okay, and that answers my question, because it was clear that DRR said you could do that. My last one is, in the past, one thing that was really helpful with the penny funds was making the public keenly aware of everything that's going on our website, reports we got. So none of the general fund or all the funds are being used for any of that website updates, reports, and so forth.
Sir, I can't speak outside of the IT support that helps us load information onto the website. That is the county's website. Any production we do, if we do hard copies of a monthly report, the penny does fund that effort.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Livingston.
Chair, Bill Malinowski.
Go right ahead.
Thank you, Chairman Manning. Mr. Neermeyer, is there a current organizational chart for what we have in this program?
That was presented at the last meeting, sir. It was the one that was approved by council on the transition of March of 2019. I think that caused some confusion, and that's why only the chart that's in attachment 1 has been presented today.
Okay, and okay, and attachment 1 is what you asked for approval last time, correct?
No, sir. Last time was a flat organization.
You asked for attachment 2 to be approved last time. And my question was, but the other attachment said it was a proposed organizational structure, correct?
That's correct, sir.
So what was attachment 2? Attachment 2 was the existing organizational chart? Is that what it was?
Let me, if you give me a moment, sir, let me pull up what was presented last time in front of me so I can reference that.
I thought you said 2 was the one that.
Yes, sir. So last time we had a proposed organization chart that reflected essentially the current organization with the new finance manager position. It was a flat organization, and I believe that prompted some of the discussion, and that if someone's the number 2, the assistant, why doesn't anyone else report to that person? So that was the attachment 1. So it had, way essentially it currently involves as the director, the assistant director, administrative coordinator, the senior accountant, which currently exists, and then the contracts and budget manager, all reporting to the director. And then it showed the project managers underneath the assistant director, and then the inspectors, and underneath the contracts and budget manager.
Okay, but right now, what you've presented to us again on page 103 of this current agenda is again different from what you presented last time. And the reason I say that is in the last presentation we had, and I may not have that last one here, but you had identified these project managers. You had a pre-construction manager, a construction manager, a pre-construction engineer / technician in each column. So you had 3 specific ones in each column. Now this time you've just given us 6 generic project managers. And I'm wondering why we would have 6 generic project managers when I think the way you had initially proposed it was better because we had specificity as to what each project manager did. So why didn't we carry that forward to this one?
Sir, if you can see on your screen barely, that was the original organization that you just described, Mr. Malinowski, that was approved in the transition of March 2019. What we've found immediately upon taking over is the division of labor between a pre-construction and construction really wasn't viable. There was too much to do. So how we're operating now is to have that engineer, that project manager own that project cradle to grave. So they would work with developing the scope, going through design, and then shepherd that into procurement for construction. Creating the pre-con and a construction manager, although that it would be great in a perfect world, it's just not a tenable organization for how we can operate here with the transportation department.
Okay, I'm done, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Malinowski. Other questions or comments about what the county staff is proposing to us for an organizational chart several layers down below the person that we hire and fire as county council?
It's
All
a
right.
general question.
Yes, Ms. Myers, go ahead.
Mr. Brown and Mr. Farah, is it common for, in the council administrative form of government, for the council to be managing departments with this level of granularity? Just seems to me that it may bog down processes, and I'd just like to know if it's unique to Richland County's ordinance or if it's common. And it may well be that you all need to tell me that at another time, but I do find this rather granular for what we're doing. Thank you.
I'd rather we hear that now than at another time because I have the same question. Mr. Brown.
Sure. So, yes, sir. I'll from a non-legal perspective, it's granular. This is not something that would routinely be decided at the council level unless you had specific information within your ordinance that details these things must come to council. So this is seemingly be a little bit out of place.
Okay, yeah, this is Brad. So yeah, under the council administrative form of government and the way the county, Richland County operates, you have direct line of communication as the council level to your three employees, the administrator, the clerk, and the attorney. Other than that, there's a state law and also a county ordinance that's verbatim as to the state law that says that other than for the purposes of inquiry, all communications for those folks under the control of the administrator need to go through the administrator. And so that's the issue you run into. So for example, what does that mean? Well, if you're a council person and you run into a public works employee and you say, hey, how's that road coming along? Well, that's just inquiry. That's fine to do that. But if you say, you know what, drop everything you're doing and go fix that road, that's a different deal. So all that has to go through the administrator. And so this would be in addition.
Mr. Farah, I apologize for interrupting you, but we have limited time. That actually wasn't my question. My question was, do other county councils approve this level of granularity? That is, do all staff org charts go through the county council for approval before implementation? I quite understand who we're meant to be communicating with from a council to staff level. I'm asking a different question though.
Well, if you did the organizational chart by ordinance, it would have to go through council. If you did it as a matter of policy, it would not.
Mr. Fair, do you have any idea whether other counties go this deep in their ordinance?
I do not. I do not have that. No, thank you.
All right. So, given that, does this group want to look at dealing with the ordinance and leave this alone at this point? Do we want to deal with this at this point and deal with ordinance? Because Ms. Myers, I certainly would be in agreement with you to get something before council for an ordinance change, because this makes no sense to me. Not this
My,
particular
thank you, sir. I'm
paper,
sorry
but
for interrupting.
go ahead.
My recommendation was going to be, I mean, I was going to vote for it because the staff clearly needs us to vote for it. But my recommendation was going to be subsequently that, perhaps the administrator working with his staff and the chair of the council could come up with an amendment, and the legal department, an amendment to the ordinance that makes this unnecessary, because it just seems very granular. Honestly, it is a waste of our time, just because I don't have the expertise to tell the transportation department that they don't need the org chart that they say they need. And they probably could be doing better things with their time than bringing this before us.
I agree. Okay, so,
What's the motion?
so the current motion is to approve what is on page 103 for the transportation department.
Now, is Ms. Myers going to make a substitute for that? I'll support it if you do.
I'm happy to make a substitute motion that this org chart be approved as a necessity for the transportation department, but that the staff and the legal department move forward with presenting an ordinance amendment to the chair that would obviate the need for this kind of council involvement in the future.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved properly. Second discussion. Ms. Black, call the roll, please.
Malinowski,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Manning,
Yes.
Myers.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. All right, and that'll be presented to council tonight as part of the Transportation Ad Hoc Committee report. Item 5D, mitigation credit sales. Easily Combined Utilities is wanting to purchase mitigation credit from the county. You find that on page 104. And the staff recommended action by staff is staff respectfully request the committee concur with these credit sales and forward to full council for consideration. Do I have a motion for that?
Move for approval, Mr. Chair.
Been properly moved.
Second.
Second by Councilman Malinowski. Discussion.
One
Mr.
question.
Chair, this is Delia.
Yes, ma'am.
I renew my concern that we are consistently and regularly selling mitigation credit from a mitigation bank that sits in one of the most blighted parts of Richland County. And we are selling those credits and improving greatly other areas across the county, the state, and certainly some other states with the historic credits that we've sold. And I do think that it's a kick in the teeth to the people who live in the area where this mitigation bank sits, that not one nickel of the money that is made on the back of this 4,000 acre mitigation bank goes to improving their community. For that reason, I will be voting no again.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Bill Malinowski.
Yes, sir.
Question for Mr. Niermeyer, and that is when you get to the fee for the out of primary service area sale in each of the two that are in front of us tonight for mitigation credits, why is it that the fee share to the company handling this is 80% and the county only gets 20% when it's quite the opposite on the actual credit shares?
Excellent question. So apparently, according to the original agreement we set up with Mill Creek Holdings, for when we sell, we get the preponderance of 92%, but then the fee share of that, it almost gets reversed. So we may get 92% of the profit and we pay 20% of the fees, and then vice versa. When we sell our credits, they only get 8%, but then they shoulder that 80%. So that's just how that agreement was set up. And if it was flipped where we wouldn't sell and Mill Creek Holdings would sell, we'd be getting that 8% vice the 92. So again, without having a contract in front of me to speak directly to it, that's my understanding.
Okay, well, with that question, possibly moving forward, you could, I'm going to ask if you could please look into this and find out why the county doesn't get a greater share at that point in time, because it seems to me all of the hard work is done by the time we get to that point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Malinowski. Others? All righty, Ms. Black, please call the roll.
Malinowski,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Manning,
Yes.
Myers,
No.
motion passes.
All righty, the next item, 5E, mitigation credit sales, Building Homes LLC. You'll find that on pages 118 through 131 of your agenda. The recommended action, staff respectfully request the committee concur with these credit sales and forward to full council for consideration. May I have a motion?
Move adoption of staff recommendations, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Been properly moved by Councilman Livingston, second by Mr. Malinowski. Before we go further, as chair of the committee, I would ask that the clerk to council's office record Councilwoman Myers' statement from item 5D verbatim for 5E, if Ms. Myers would like that to be so.
Yes, and I have a friendly amendment to offer to the maker of this motion.
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
I would offer an amendment that requires the staff to look into the feasibility of devoting some 5 or 10% of the fees redeemed from or received from the mitigation credit sales to improvements in the area where the mitigation bank sits going forward.
I'm the maker of the motion. I'd rather that be presented to council as a whole, because I don't know what that really means in terms of the impact and so forth. So it's something I
Well, it's
consider.
just a motion for research, Mr. Livingston. It won't do
Oh,
anything.
okay. You're not saying do it, you're saying research it. Yes, I'm okay with that.
Yes, and bring back some information on the feasibility of it, how it could be done, how long it would take to implement something like that, what the amounts involved might be. Yes,
Yeah, I'm
sir,
okay with that.
research.
Thanks for clarifying.
Okay, Mr. Malinowski is the seconder. Are you accepting of that?
No, I'm not, Mr. Chair, because I feel that this is a totally separate motion devoted to something other than what we're trying to accomplish here, and that should be forwarded to the council as a motion for vetting as we do all other motions.
All right.
I'll second Mr. Livingston's motion if he's retracting it. I'm the maker of the friendly
No.
amendment, and I just think that it's just research.
I
It won't do
think
anything.
you're saying he's holding on to his second, not subtracting.
Oh, okay.
All right, so are we back to the original motion? Is that what I'm understanding? To move forward to council for the credit sales without a friendly amendment? All righty, and what I said about everything that Councilwoman Myers said related to 5D be recorded also for 5E verbatim. All righty, call the roll, please.
Before we,
Mr. Chair.
I'm
Yes,
sorry,
ma'am.
please continue, sir.
No, go ahead.
No, my comment was out of order.
Okay. All righty, Ms. Black, call the roll, please.
Mr. Chair, quick question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Malinowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. in the actual sales notice, and maybe this is just a technicality, we don't have to abide by it, but in each of these, and I meant to bring it up at the last time, it says that the county has 3 business days to respond to this sales notice, and it's dated October 11th. So does this mean that somebody's already responded to them and we're just going through the motions because we're way past October 11th?
Mr. Niemeyer,
That's correct, sir. Mr. Epps, who's on the call, if he wants to elaborate, once he receives it, we talk about it and we respond. Yeah, the 3 days is in there, but he's worked with the Mill Creek Holdings because they know this has to go back before committee and then get approved by council before it can be approved. So they work with us on that.
Okay, so what is the response that was given within those 3 days?
Mr. Epps, can you answer that one?
Sorry, I was having a little trouble getting unmuted. Yes, I responded that we do want to take the opportunity to sell the credits from the county's portion of the credits. However, for final approval, we have to go through the council.
Thank you, sir.
all right,
Just a procedural question, Mr. Chair.
please go right ahead.
To the administrator, is that standard operating procedure? I mean, this isn't small. So we preliminarily approve this kind of thing and then come and bring it to council for, I guess, a rubber stamp. Is that normal?
I would say no. I didn't understand that he was saying we were preliminary approving it. My understanding was that he said that we would like the opportunity, but we have to go through the process and bringing it to council. That was my understanding. It was not an approval for staff and then a rubber stamp by the council.
So I would suggest that a better practice going forward might be that the language in the document needs to be modified to the extent that, because Mr. Malinowski is right. If it says the offer closes in 3 days, unless somebody accepted it, it would seem to be closed. That's just plain vanilla contracts.
That makes sense to me. So, staff, please look into that.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Let's tie that into when they're looking into Ms. Meyer's other questions too. Put it all in there.
They said they're not. You won't let them look into it, Mr. Malinowski.
No, not now. When you bring forward your motion, we'll throw that in there too.
Oh no, this is a transportation issue. Those are separate. No, sir. No, sir.
Good.
All right, anything else before we carry the motion?
No, sir.
Ms. Black, call the roll, please.
Malinowski,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Manning,
Yes.
Myers.
No.
Motion passes.
All righty, before I get to item 5, are all hearts, minds clear? Does anybody want to say anything additional?
Move to
I'd
adjourn,
just
Mr.
like to
Chair.
I'd just like to ask
Yes, ma'am.
if the chair could rule on whether or not it would be proper to offer a motion here related exclusively to a transportation matter. I don't think that should go. It's germane to the topic. I don't understand why it wouldn't be appropriate here.
Well, you make it and we'll figure it out.
All right. I just move that we ask the staff to research the issue of whether or not a portion of the proceeds from the sales of mitigation credits could be earmarked to improve the community surrounding the mitigation bank, just to bring back information.
I'm going to rule that needs to be a motion to go to council and for the chair to send that, I'm guessing here, but to wherever the
Back
chair
to the
will see that
transportation
is
committee,
appropriate.
yeah. Well, I have no desire to challenge the ruling of the chair. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, item 6, adjournment.
So move for adjournment, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Ms. Black, please call the roll.
Malinowski,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Manning,
Thank you to staff and committee members and Councilwoman Teratio for joining us, and my answer is yes.
and Myers.
Good job, Ms. Black. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Motion passes. Meeting adjourned.